you so much. Definitely it's good to be here again. It's a very special Mokum Torah. I always feel when I come here, we've had special Tamidim here, Baruch Hashem, we share some unique nachas. But besides that, just it's palpable. Especially now with the birds chirping, it's a chiddush that they're not burning up, flying over the power of Torah. It's a chesed HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not that they didn't burn. Otherwise, it would be too difficult. You're constantly, cleaning up birds here. So Baruch Hashem, it's Chazdei Hashem. But Yeshiva mentioned Chavetz Chaim Yeshiva, and that we share things in common. So there's a classic vart by Rabbi David Leibowitz Zatzal, by Rebbe's Rebbe, one of the close Talmidim of the Alto Sabotka. They say in Musar it was Kamadas Talmud Muvuk. I think it just and it reminds us the foundational principle of why we're here, because obviously Torah is Iker, and you can't do anything without Torah, but the reality is you also can't do anything in Torah without other prerequisites. It's not just Torah. I mean, Torah encompasses everything, but it's really not just the limit per se. Because we just read in Parashah Shemnot, the Vatirena HaMiyaldas Es Elokim. The Miyaldas, they feared HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they could not kill those babies. David made a very interesting observation. You ask most mothers to kill a baby, if you're a midwife and your whole mahus, your whole essence is to save children and to bring children into the world, and you ask them to kill babies as they come out of the mother's womb, it's almost an unthinkable act. So how could you do it? It's Pasha. It's not. How could I? I mean, we're not getting into the whole abortion world today. Craziness going on in America. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's definitely Olam Hafach. But Lamaisa, so you made the point is you have such incredible ladies with tremendous emotion, natural love for a human being, for a baby, a Torah baby. So what Terenam the elder says, you need Yiras Shamayim for that. And he made the very, very important point that you see from many other places as well, that this idea of natural morality, natural emotion, what your natural human instincts tell you, and to follow that as the anchor and the fulcrum of your life in terms of morality, it's a dangerous thing. Even though naturally you would do it, but if it's not fueled by Yiras Elokim, then it chas v'shalom can go off. It's not enough to just simply be moralistic or be have a good, wonderful view of the world. It's got to be fueled by Yiras Elokim, because otherwise it will detour. It will fall off the edge. A famous ma'aseh by Rabbi when he came to Berlin, I think in the early 1930s, late 1920s, and they were showing off the culture of Germany and the culture of all that. And he said, he quoted the pasuk, Rak ein Yiras Elokim, when Avrohom Avinu was asked, why did you, Avimelech tells him, what are you getting me into trouble for? Why didn't you tell me that this is your wife? He says, because they were going to kill me. Rak ein Yiras Elokim Malkam Hazeh. Because even though, yes, you have a lot to be proud about, if it's not rooted in a fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's not the anchor of your life in terms of why do I want to save these babies? What's the motivating factor? Of course I have natural compassion. Of course I have natural tendencies to want to be a good person. But you have to fuel it through Torah and through Yiras Elokim, through an understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's going to guide my midos, guide my whole perspective of Ben Ol Mechaverei. And it's not something that comes easy. So in other words, even though we're naturally nice, that's not enough. It's not enough to be naturally nice. And because what really counts in this world is not what comes naturally. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us natural tendencies. Some are born, well, as the Rambam says, with very sweet tendencies, a sweet person. We all know some geschmacka people. Other people they're not so geschmack. They say Rav Moshe we talked about the fact that his tafkid in terms of what he needed to overcome was a mid of kas. That was his. Very brilliant people have a short fuse sometimes. Very brilliant people, when you try I'm sure we've seen it along the way. Amazing, minds, but if I don't understand the Rashba, can you say to me, you don't understand the Rashba? How can you understand the Rashba? Because it's natural, because it's so clear to him. So he had to fight. That was his, when he was growing up and he was developing his Yiras Shamayim and his Midos, that was his And they say that famous Meiser that when somebody once smashed a door in his finger and his mamash was bleeding, he didn't say a word. He had such an incredible level of being misaking that mida, what typically would have been, what are you doing? How can you close the door on my finger? Why don't you watch what you're doing? No, mamash didn't say a word. He only knew that he smashed Moshe's finger after upstairs when he went to a side room and he started washing off the blood. That's when he realized, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. So this idea of understanding that even though, yes, Baruch Hashem, we're good and we're wonderful, but the idea of constantly working on ourselves, of constantly developing this relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a deeper level. There's an incredible Chavetz Chaim in Parashas, I believe it's Parashas Ekev, where he points out that there are 3 times the expression V'yosel Melekecha or Valachta halicha b'dracha, valachta b'dracha is mentioned in Parshas Vekev. Once it's mentioned before Yiras Shemayim. The next time it's mentioned between Yiras Hashem and Avos Hashem. And the third time in the very same Parsha, it's at the very end of the Parsha, it's mentioned after Avos Hashem, but before Dveikus Hashem. So, like what? 3 references, and they're all in different places. One's before Yira, one's after Yira, one's after Ava, before Dveikus, which is the ultimate Madrega. And he makes the point that it's very easy for us to think, as the Rabbeinu Yonah says in Avos, he talks about the fact, incredible, right at the very end of Perek Shlishi, he points out that Imein Yir Ein Chacham, Imein Derech Eretz Ein Torah. And he says, because if you don't have a level of Tikkun Amidos before you start learning, if somebody's really makulkal and he's starting to learn, but he's not worked on himself, he's not in any way sensitive, and again, rooted in Yiras Shamayim, but the idea of having those qualities of being compassionate, and just being a mensch. If you're not a mensch, he's all over the place, but he wants to learn. It's not going to be chal. You have to be working on yourself as you're learning. So the Chavetz Chaim points out, a lot of people think, okay, it's like a prerequisite. So, okay, I mean, Derech Eretz Kadmul Torah, I get that. But I already have now Yiras Elokim. So ich bin a fine Yid, ich bin a Heimish Yid, I learned that I'm from. So I'm done with the Midah stuff. I have to learn Musa. Now you have people with this attitude. The Musa is for the beginners. You learn the Mesilas Yesharim. Once you're a little bit more advanced, I have to spend my time learning Mesilas Yesharim. So he says, Kodesh Baruch Hu puts it again. What's halachta b'drachav? Halicha b'drachav is af hu rachum, ma hu rachum, afator rachum, ma hu chan afator chan. It's development of the midos. That's the idea of Yirasel Mekecha. And he says, so therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu puts it after Yira. Even though you have Yirasel Kim, you're a ganz fine Yehid, you still got to work on your midos. You still have to work on developing yourself and putting in those hours of self-introspection and self-analysis and just working on whether it's a kas or it's a gaiva or it's whatever the midos are. Just have to keep working on it because that's part and parcel of what Torah is all about. And then even after you have Avos Hashem, which we know Avos Hashem is such a high madrega, and for sure if I'm working on Avos Hashem, for sure I'm not going to spend time with Orchos Tzadikim, Chavos Avos. Come on, it's no, mamish. You're after Ava. Do you think you've mastered it? You think you're done? It's an ongoing process because, as the Vilna Gaon says, until you're misaking those midos, until you mamish have a total mastery, which is harder than learning Kol HaTorah Kula. It's been well said, well documented. It was incredible Vilna Gaon. He says the fact that he says in Mishlei, he talks about the fact that if you're not misaking your midos, he says if that's not your tafkid to work on your midos, he says Lama li chayim. That's the expression. Lama li chayim. Famous Gron Mishlei, beginning of Mishlei. It sort of struck me when he says, Lama li chayim. The Vilna Gaon, who spent his life mastering Kol HaTorah Kula in the most phenomenal way. A man who didn't have really time to talk to his sister. When his sister, he hadn't seen her, I don't know how many years, how many decades, says, we'll have time to reconnect and all that. But right now, he was cool with Torah. He didn't have anything to do. He can say, Lama li chayim? What do you mean, Lama li chayim? So I'm not working on midos, but I have Kol HaTorah Kula to learn. I have a whole, the Yam Shel Talmud that's never ending. What do you mean, Lama li chayim? But he's telling us something so profound that is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking at the totality of who we are as people. If it's not at the same time we're working on that sensitivity, that level of connection, the Yiras Elokim, the Avos Hashem, the Dveikis, but together at the same time with the Anov of Moshe Rabbeinu to just strive for those kinds of levels of midos and an extension, working on ourselves, that we're missing something. That's sort of part and parcel of what it is to develop, to be the Yisholim and the true Ben Torah. That's the true Ben Torah. I think that's the Pshat. Famous Gemara, Rabbi and Rabbi Chanina were going at it. It's a Gemara two different times. It's brought this Maisa where they're arguing, and Rabbi Chanina says to Rabbi, he says, "You know who you're starting up with? You think the halacha should be like you?" He says, Rabbi Chanina says, "The halacha's got to be like me." He says, "You know who I am?" He says, "Tell me who you are." He says, "If the entire Torah was forgotten, I have the intellect to bring it all back." That's pretty good. He can reconstruct Kol HaTorah Kula. That's who Rabbi Chanina was. That's what he told Rabbi. Rabbi says, "I'm duly impressed. Very nice, but you know who I am? You know who you are, who you're arguing with?" And he says, "Tell me." He says, "I do you one better." What's better than being able to reconstruct Kol HaTorah Kula? He says, "I make sure that Torah is not forgotten in the first place. And the Gemara goes through a whole process of he traps the animals and he uses the skins to write the parchment, and he feeds the Yisayimim who need the food of the deer, and then he has a whole crop rate of learning where he learns this Parashah with these group of kids, and he goes in this Parashah with those group of kids, and he goes Chazars, the learning, the Mishnayos and the Chumash with different communities, and a whole cooperative learning. Mamish, I learned this Gemara many years ago, and what is going on here? But we're not talking about the Educator of the Year award. We're not talking about the 4th grade Rebbe, the greatest Rebbe in the history of Klal Yisrael. Okay, you want to put up for yourself for that title? We'll give you the title. But Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi were talking about a tifa sugya. They were talking about deep numbers. So because you make sure that 10-year-old kids, 11-year-old kids learn Mishnayos and learn Chumash, and it's all very nice sometimes. But what's got to do with that? Allah should be like me because I'm making a Torah should not be forgotten in the first place. Because you're the Mashoja adds a little kinage because you're b'kayach and I'm b'poyel. You have the potential, but I actually make sure the Torah stays within Klal Yisrael. So what's going on? What's pshat? And the pshat is because when it comes to the essence of Torah, when we talk about the totality of an Adam Gadol, of what we're all striving for, it has to embrace that level of chesed, that level of reaching out, that level of the concern of every single yid. If that's what Rabbi was doing, as great as Rabbi China's mind was, Gadol Ma'asechiyah. Gadol Ma'asechiyah, says the Gemara. His actions were so astounding in terms of his concern for every member of Klal Yisrael. The chesed wasn't just chesed. The chesed was the totality of developing that mensch who can see the emes of Torah, and that's chus. It's masik shmai talib the hilchasa. That's something that we have to appreciate. In other words, everything we're working on really works in unison. It's one goal. It's one entity. It's the idea of being masak in the midos, to developing the Yiras Elokim, of course learning, which is the ikr, but it has to be. We can't forget the other things along the way. That's why, and when we don't, and when we're using those energies to work on ourselves, because really, obviously with Torah there's tremendous yigiyah, but in life, the idea of becoming a better person, it's not a simple thing. It requires tremendous yigiyah, tremendous work, tremendous focus, tremendous honesty, tremendous readiness and openness to hear the beginning of Shemais. The Rabbeinu B'chai talks about the idea of tochacha, the idea of being open to rebuke. I remember my Rabbi would always say, in today's world, we can't give tochacha. He says, we're tissue paper. He says, we fall apart, in a second. If somebody tells us something, that wasn't so nice, maybe we should have said it a little bit nicer, we can't handle it, But really, we have to work on being able to handle it. He says, if we're not open to tochacha, not open to hearing the message of improvement, of finding whatever weaknesses, he says, incredibly, he says, that's why Avrohom had gaguim for Yishmael. He didn't give him tocha. He didn't rebuke him. That's why he went off. Yitzchak, man Yitzav es Bonov, he gave him tochacha, and that's why he was Yitzchak. And Yaakov, he says Yitzchak with Yaakov the same way. Yitzchak did not give Esav to Chach, and that's why Esav went off to become Esav. Scary today, because if we're not ready to hear that, then Chaz v'Sholom, we're running the risk of not having being open to hearing from a Rebbe the idea of improvement, the idea of where you can rectify your actions. And Lamaisa, that openness and that readiness to work literally has such profound power. It's mind-boggling. The famous Rabbi Shmulevitz talks about the fact that we just talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. Obviously, all the parashas talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, and of all the names, he had some beautiful names, some incredible names. And after the name that the Torah calls him is Moshe. Why? Because I drew him out of the water. Says Basya Bas Paro, so therefore he's called Moshe Rabbeinu. So some Egyptian girl gives him a name. That's a name that sticks when he has such holy. He had 9 other names. There's beautiful names that have such spiritual components. So you talk about the Bas extending yourself. He says incredibly, and it's a great parenting nakuda. I'm sure some of us are parents, but if we're not, we'll be parents. And he says that it wasn't just a name, not just a name. When Basya Bas Paro extended, when she extended her arms, which wasn't really long enough to reach Moshe Rabbeinu, but she decided, I'm going to go for it anyway. I'm going to extend myself and give of myself to reach beyond where I normally could reach, because I have to get that baby. I want to get that baby, and therefore, obviously, and that's happened ultimately, that she was able to reach him. But that Mesiras Nefesh, that extension of going beyond yourself for somebody else, was injected into Moshe Rabbeinu. Because we have the power to literally give of ourselves into somebody else. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu's koyach, his unique leadership skills that was so special, and obviously made him Moshe Rabbeinu, arguably the greatest man in Jewish history. That it was his readiness to do whatever it took to save Klal Yisrael. There was no expense, there was no energy, there's nothing that he wouldn't. He's ready to give up everything for Klal Yisrael. Where did he get that from? Says Rabbi Shmulevitz, obviously he needed to work on it himself, but literally Basi was able to sort of, in a sense, transmit it and inject it into him. That's the power of what a person who is going beyond themselves, to work on themselves, to purify themselves, to do an active, in one act of Mesiras Nefesh can literally be injected into somebody else to change the character, or to develop a certain koyach, to give somebody else an additional koyach. That's the godless of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what made him so special. So, when you think of, therefore, in terms of, what is that we have to work on? Obviously, the Yigiyah B'Torah, but the idea that we have the ability as well and the opportunity in such a Makom Torah. There's an amazing story. Just, again, and something that Rabbi Yon also points out is that without Torah, goes both ways. Without Torah, there's no way to really master the midos. Without the midos, we can't learn Torah. Without Torah, we don't even know how far the midos can go. There's no way to really imagine the laws of Lashon Hara, all of the different aspects of what the Torah expects of us. If we have the receptacle, if we're ready to learn, and we have the midos that allows us sort of to be chal, then we can take it to the next level. But you try to figure out the laws of Lashon Hara on your own, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu be makbid on talking about the Jew being makabed Lashon Hara. It's incredible how far the Torah's expectations go. And so without the learning, you'll never know. But without the readiness to hear and readiness to extend oneself, it really is mamish. It's hainuhach. It's part of a whole process of growing together, the Yerushalayim, the Midos, and the Torah. Amazing story, just sort of to highlight this concept that really, the greater the gadol, the greater the sensitivity, the greater the mastery of one's emotions and one's clarity of how should one behave, how should we act. Maybe you might have heard the story, but it really speaks to when somebody really gets the world for what it is and what's really important, how sensitive we have to be. It's a story about a fellow, this is going back probably over 100 years. In Europe, a fellow goes to a yeshiva, a very chashuv yeshiva, and he says, I have a wonderful daughter, you know who I am, he's able to, the person who's going to marry my daughter will be able to learn, and who do you have for me? He asked the Rishiva, who do you have for me? So Rishiva thought about it. He said, I have 2 amazing boys. Let me think about it. We'll call one Ruvain and one Shimon. And he thinks about it. He tells him the next day, I think Ruvain is the right boy for your daughter. Let's read a shidduch. So sure enough, they meet. Beautiful, chick-chack, things go fast. They didn't fetch in those days as much as we fetch today, but they, they break, I don't know if they break the glass, but l'chaim, mazel tov, they make the shidduch. As time goes on and they're planning for the wedding, the chassan Ruvain notices that the kallah is not as excited as she was before. In her face, So he says, and he hears something is wrong, and sure enough, what was wrong? She heard some. This is Lashon Hara, even though it might not look like Lashon Hara, but it's Lashon Hara. What did she hear? She heard that Shimon was really better. That the Yeshiva picked Reuven, but Shimon's really stronger. And, so she felt she was entitled to the top guy in the Yeshiva. So, now she's finding out that Reuven's really not the top guy. So she's not as thrilled. She wasn't as excited. So Reuven says to the girl, he says, listen, he says, it's okay, we can call her off. I have no tinus, it's a big deal to call off, but he says, I'm meichel 100%, mechila gemura, and we're good, we can break it off. Because I see, I want you to be excited. You shouldn't feel that you're settling. They broke it off. They broke it off. She marries Shimon. Okay. Life goes on. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later, I'm not sure exactly how much later. Comes an Adam Gadol to the yeshiva and says, I'm starting a very, very chashuva yeshiva, for the top boys. I need a faydik magid shir. I need a magid shir that mamish can take guys to the next level. So who do you have for me? Do you have anybody for me? This, again, it was a shame dover. This Makam Torah is a shame dover, is having very top guys. So he thought it over. The Yeshiva thought it over, and he says, I have a guy for you. He's mamish tremendous. I think he's going to be great for the job. Reuven is really the guy for you. So the Yeshiva meets with Reuven, blows him away. Lumdis, you name it, Mashaz, Marams. I overheard Baruch Hashem guys are working on Mashaz here. It was a mamish pleasure to hear music to my ears. So he meets with him and he says the Reshiva calls up says to the other Reshiva, I was super impressed. He's my man. I'm going to offer him the job. Tell him he has the job. And this is a job that mamish should give anything to get this job. This was mamish a spitz job, the top magid shir in a very chashuva place. So anyway, they offered him the job, and Reuven said, let me think about it. And Reuven said, no, I have to turn it down. She was shocked. You're turning down this job? Who would not give anything for this job? I don't understand. He doesn't make sense. And you're so perfect for it. You're the right man. So he says, let me tell you. And the names of the people here are names that we know. This story was about Gedolim that became Gedolim. I'm not sure if, I'm not sure which one, so I'm not quoting, but this is a Bavusta Maisa, and it's with people that are well known. Ultimately became well known. I think both Reuven and Shimon became well known. So Reuven said, I can't take the job. He said, what do you mean you can't take the job? He says, listen, this is a job that literally anybody would give their right arm for it. It's going to get out that I got this job. And this is a job that I can't have that lady who's not married to Shimon for 5 years or 6 years. I can't have her hear that I got this job. She's going to say, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I can't believe it. Reuven got the spitz job. Why did they offer it to my husband? How come they didn't offer it to my husband? I can't have her thinking and having any type of a rifkin and that love and that connection between her and her husband. I can't be the goyim of that. I can't cause that. And if I can't do it. Now, Rabbi, again, I don't, these are hagoshes that are very, very high food. But this is a Torah hagosha. No one paskin, the Rosh even say you're wrong. Okay, because in the world of Hagashas, in the world of Midos, again, you need to be a Gadol B'Yisrael. You need to be somebody of a deep level of lumdus, of connection to Torah to be able to feel this way. But you see that that's all part of Torah. This is the Lomali Chaim that the Vilna Gaon is talking about in terms of focusing on our on amidos. And this is the minamayim shishu. This is the extension of oneself, where even though it's so much in my interest to do this, I would want to do it so much. But you know what? I'm going to let go. And I think that's the pshat also. I think Chaim Shmulevitz mentions this. I was bothered by, they say a story about the Chavetz Chaim. They asked, I think it was talking about my wife's grandfather, who Toli, my wife's great-grandfather, Toli Trupp, was sick. And I believe the story was with him, and they went around the yeshiva in Radin to donate minutes of life for his refuah. They came to the Chavetz Chaim, and the Chavetz Chaim was thinking about it, and he ended up giving a very small amount of time. The story everyone focused on the Chavetz Chaim, that to him 10 seconds was a world. So if I'm giving him 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute and a half, whatever he gave him, that's what you can do in a minute. But I was, what do you mean giving life? What kind of thing? We don't. You give tzedakah of somebody. You give life for minutes. Who are we to give minutes of our lives to anybody? The whole idea seems bizarre in our world. And I think the pshat is, he doesn't say the story, but I think the concept is also because if you feel like connection, you're makatayv to somebody. When you receive something good, he says, Chayim Chayiv, I think is the lashon of the Gemara. That I owe you my life, and I can, literally, of course, that Toiv is able to extend our energies into that other person. That's what Pshat, and when Klai Yisrael said, Be'etzem Hayom Ezah Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Klai Yisrael, I know you think you're going to hold it, you're going to prevent Moshe from dying in Hazino. I know you're thinking it, but it's not going to happen, because Be'etzem Hayom Ezah, against the natural tendency of the world, I'm going to take him anyway. What are the natural tendencies? Who controls life and death? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What pshat that Klaisel had to have him that we can control Moshe's death? So that's a pshat because they said that such a koras toiv that they can literally inject life into a person. This is the power of the perfection of Amidas, the hargashis that we have. So Bez Hashem, you're in a place where Baruch Hashem, this is focused upon, this is learned, it's a lifelong process. The beauty of every day, getting up every day, is because there's always another nisayon, another challenge, another place to just work on ourselves to become that much greater, that much deeper, and that much more connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us the Yisiyat Ishmael to climb that spiritual ladder, and that's so foolish. Thank you so much.